I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James. I get the honor to introduce you to extraordinary women. I mean, these are women that inspire me. These are women that are way showers. These are women that have taken their control of their own lives and brought their creativity, their ingenuity, their light to the planet. So they're way showers and they model for us possibility. So each one brings information and wisdom that you can use for your own growth, your own expansion, your own healing. You can also go to cynthiajames.net. I have a lot of stuff there for you, and you can sign up for my newsletter. We do this podcast every week. And so come back, meet a new woman. We're on all of the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, and video YouTube. So come back, tell a lot of people, a lot of women that you know, because you will not be disappointed. These are fabulous women. So let me introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Jessica Barksdale, and her 16th novel, What the Moon Did, was published February of 2023 by Flexible Press. Her short story collection, Trick of the Porch Light, is forthcoming in 2023. She's also published 2 poetry collections, When We Almost Drowned from 2019 and Grim Honey from 2021. She taught at Diablo Valley College in Pleasant Hill, California, and she also now teaches at UCLA Extension and in an online MFA program for Southern New Hampshire University. She lives in the Pacific Northwest with her husband and her fabulous dogs.
Who would definitely be here if they could, right here.
Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's really a pleasure to talk a little more with you. It was great meeting you at a reading and listening to your words. So you are also a fabulous woman. So I feel in good company here.
Well, thank you. I want to talk about your writing, but I want to really ask, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a really interesting area in terms of cultural change, but also not change. I grew up in a town called Orinda, which is on the other side of the Berkeley Hills in the 60s and the 70s. So you know what was going on in the 60s and 70s in Berkeley. Okay. You know, all the unrest and the protests and the religious and the sexual changes in mores. And then on the other side of the hill was a very small bedroom community. My father was an engineer who worked for Standard Oil, as it was. There was no Chevron back then, and they told their people to go down the San Pablo Dam Road and go live in this little town. So there were, it was very middle class that soon became upper middle class, but it was strangely isolated from a lot of the stuff that was going on, but it eventually infiltrated, but California. So it was a really interesting time and place, but also isolated from a lot of the stuff that was going on.
Wow. And big family, small family?
Small family-ish. Well, for the time, I had 2 sisters. My father unfortunately died when I was 15. And then my youngest sister died when she was in her early 20s. So we kind of whittled away at the family. And it was very difficult for my mom. She was left with 3 kids. She was 39 years old. And she'd gone to Stanford, but had not really done anything much with her degree at the time, and then just sort of got us through and out into the world. But it was not the typical trajectory that a lot of my friends had.
Right. And how did you personally navigate the losses and the shifts that your family was going through?
Well, back then, now if this happened in a family, we'd all be in immediate therapy and support groups, right? Then it was sink or swim. We had family friends and we had family who lived away, but then eventually everybody kind of, goes home. Your family flies home and the friends figure you're doing okay. So I became what we would now call a parental child. And I kind of took over the older sister, helping my mom navigate the difficulties that she faced. And she's also not really a forthcoming personality. So I was already, but I had to be more. And then I finally just left. I was like, I'm done with this sinking ship. I'm going to go to college.
That's great. And did you write in college?
I did. I actually started writing when I was in high school. And instead of passing math class, it took me twice to get out of algebra. I was writing a novel and I would read it to my friends after class. They'd say, what did you write? What did you write today? And we'd sit down and I'd read it aloud to them. And I actually still have it. And it's really horrible. But at the time, they enjoyed it because I would pull in things that really happened around us and what our school was like, and I sort of entertaining them. But I always gravitated toward the literature, and I loved history. But very difficult for me to get through the sciences and the math. But I think that I always felt they sort of graduated me just as a favor.
Well, I totally get it. Well, I'm a creative too. And so math and science was so fascinating. But okay, so you were writing this novel, but you didn't really know what you were doing. You were just, were you telling stories?
Right, because I was a reader. That was what I think a lot of writers start as readers. They're voracious readers as children. And I always thought a book was the best thing in the whole world. Right.
Right. Okay. But now, 16 novels later, okay, can we go back to novel one?
Novel one. So novel one, I was taking a class at the Napa Valley Writers Conference. I had started, as a poet, and I branched out into short stories, and I decided to take a fiction class with the writer Cristina Garcia, who wrote Dreaming in Cuban, this very famous novel. And she finally on day 2, she goes, I've had it with you people. You all write beautifully, but you're not telling me a story. You have no conflict. You have no tension. Nothing's happening. She goes, here's your assignment for tonight. Go home. And I want you to write a scene between 2 people who are keeping secrets from each other.
Whoa.
So I said, okay, so that's immediate tension. So I went home, and as before the internet and you could save things on files and such, this is 98, I had a scrap of paper about a girl who hid a pregnancy and gave birth to the baby in a closet in her house. And in my brain, I went home to my hotel room, right? And I sat there in the room going, so I created a conversation between this imagined girl who was going to have a baby and her sister who came home. They were in it together. These 2 sisters had this secret. And I just started writing that scene. And so I went back to class the next day, and everybody, of course, had something much better than what we've been doing, describing trees and flowers. This time we all had scenes where people were doing things with each other. And I never stopped writing that scene. I kept going. I went home, I kept writing, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And then I went through the revision process. And in the year 1999, I began to send it out to agents and got an agent. And then interminable months went by while it was with many editors, and it finally came out it got bought, sold, and it came out in 2001. But it was I wasn't the spring chicken I had hoped. I was going to be turning 40, and I had thought when I was writing the high school novel for my friends that this was going to happen fast. I'm going to get to college and I'm just going to boom, pop out a few novels and become famous. Well, that's not how it went.
But what's interesting to me is that 39, almost 40, is the same age your mother was in the middle of a huge transition and new chapter.
That is, I've never really thought of it that way, right? It was like, okay, cracking into another part of your life,
right?
And what's going to happen next? So good spotting.
I don't know why my mind works that way. So tell me what you like to write about.
I love knowing the story of what is going on. I like to look at people and try to, and who become characters. Like this girl with her pregnancy. Who's the father? Where's the mother? Well, one thing about that mother, I had to kill that mother off in that novel because I just couldn't imagine a mother not seeing. Right?
Hello.
Yeah. So where's the mother? What happened in this family to make this possible? How is she feeling? What's she going to do? So my interest in people is what makes this person tick. If I see a person in the real world, I'm as nosy as I am on the page with a character. Like, what is going on with this character? What is the backstory? What is the future story?
So your curiosity, it takes you to the next place. Well, okay, so let me talk about your poetry for a moment. I mean, because you've got, 2 poetry collections. How many are in these collections?
I think there's probably about 40 to 50 poems in each collection. That's about the average length of a collection. Poetry is so amazing because it can do a lot in a small amount of words. You can actually see the finished product in front of you. Like there's a poem, you can see it, you can work on it. It's more like sculpture because you can tweak. With a novel, novels are baggy and huge, and I'm scrolling, I'm searching for words. I lose like continuity, even if I'm working on it every single day, which I do when I write a novel. I have to tap into it every day to remember, even if I have notes. With a poem, you can just really immerse yourself in it, feel that it's sort of done, come back later. It doesn't matter how long, you can still see it. You can work on it. You can take it to a workshop. Everyone can read it. No one's complaining about reading your poem.
Right.
Well,
that's really great. But I think some people are afraid of poetry. I mean, it's like, am I saying anything? Are people gonna get it? Are they gonna feel the same things I'm feeling? What made you know you were a poet?
I don't know. It was kind of the first stuff that really came out in a way. And I will say that my initial poems weren't all that great, but I feel like poems are just images, or they're probably the thing Christina Garcia wasn't wishing we were, poems can be descriptive and they have to have an emotional core, but they can spend a little more time on the details. I also know a lot of poets, and I had friends who were poets, so it never seemed to me to be the problem. Where I see the problem with poetry is that human readers are afraid of poetry because poetry is going to be hard and confusing. It's going to sound like Shakespeare. It's going to rhyme. It's going to be in a pattern. There's going to be big words. I'm not going to understand it, so therefore I'm not going to read it. Where I think that so much of the poetry being written today is immediately accessible, totally human, wonderful in terms of you can relate to it. But there's a reader. I think poets are the biggest readers of poetry. And I wish it had a little bit of a bigger audience.
Yeah, well, and we're in this fast-paced world too, where, people are wanting to binge on streaming and do all this other stuff instead of read. I want to know what the moon did. What did it do?
What the moon did. Well, the title came from a point of view section of my main character when she's all grown up and she's suffering from illness and she's sort of in a delusion about all the bad things she thought the moon did to her, which is
Oh,
ironic. The moon is a symbol of womanhood.
mhm.
That's a female in most mythologies, except for a couple of the Native American stories. The moon is a woman. She's a goddess. She's a goddess. And so it was, I think it came, that title and that image came from a feeling of being betrayed as a woman
Mm.
for an entire lifetime. And I like the title, but when my publisher picked up the novel, I told him, I said, you are free to retitle this book because titles are very difficult for me. I don't know
Mm.
about you, but I agonize over them and don't always do the best job. But he really liked it because he saw this sort of theme running through it. So the moon, of course, did nothing. It's the character's perspective on being a woman.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
So you're a teacher,
Yes.
and when, wannabe writers come to you, what do you tell them? How do you support them in finding their voice?
That's the word you use is voice is a really a tricky one, isn't it? Because I can't actually teach anyone voice.
Mhm.
I think I can help them get confidence in the writing process and in sharing their work and in keeping words flowing enough that so at some point they will land on their voice. Because I'm
Mhm.
sure you've been in groups with writers or you've heard writing and you hear the voice and you go,
Mhm.
wow, that person has a voice. And no one taught that person that voice. That voice is something that comes out of a writer who is engaged in their craft.
Yes. So it's really about really writing. If you're a
Yeah,
writer, you write.
right. So, and the more you write, the less afraid you'll be
Mhm.
of the writing process. The more you share your work, the less afraid you'll be of the workshop process. And then the more you'll just keep fine tuning, and finding the confidence to actually be who you are. And what I just got this amazing rejection. It wasn't quite a rejection. I have a third collection that I sent a poetry collection,
Mhm.
and I was an honorable mention in this contest. And but the editor wrote me and she said, you have a distinctive voice. And I thought, you know what? I'm taking this rejection all the way home because,
Yeah.
yeah, I will take distinctive voice. And then it's probably looking at some of the poems in the collection that maybe aren't as distinctive. So, and I have no fear at all anymore of rejection or sometimes I'm a little disappointed, but
Yeah.
overall, it just inspires me to keep going. And I hope with my students, I'm able to inspire them to just keep going down the path, you know,
Yes.
keep going down the path.
Yeah. And, I love what you just said about rejection. I used to be an actress, and, there's a lot of rejection when you're acting. And the same is true in my singing world and in writing.
Right.
But the thing is like, what I love about what you just said was, I'll take the distinguished voice because that's what you're aiming for.
Right.
That's
Right.
what you want to do, is to bring your uniqueness to the writing. And so I guess there's a difference between writing a novel writing a memoir, writing poetry. How do people get clear about what they want to write, and then how do they get support in doing that?
I think what I have found is that I will start writing, maybe not knowing what I'm doing, and the genre will appear within the first few sentences. I go, oh, this is a short nonfiction piece. Okay, it's nonfiction. That tells me that I can't lie. Right? Oh, this is a poem. Okay, so now I can work on shape and structure and format and detail and language. Oh, this is a novel. I need to slow down. I need to let this thing open up. So I think for me and for a number of writers, that when you begin, the genre appears to you. And then you need to turn to the writers who write the genre that you suddenly find yourself in. So I personally have never written a full-length memoir. I write nonfiction pieces because I get very antsy with my own experience. I'm like, I really don't want to talk about this again. So I will make it a short thing. But with a novel, I start thinking, okay, I need to engage my favorite readers, or I need to break this up in bits for my writing group. Or, you know what, with this novel, I'm going in a different direction. I need to maybe take a class. One of the things with UCLA Extension is that the big perk for me is I get a free class every quarter that I teach.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it is great. And I've taken many, many classes. So the short story collection that I have coming out, many of those were written in short story classes that I took at UCLA Extension.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I mentioned those writers in the acknowledgments because I just, I think the best thing, and I tend to think, and this is maybe a little biased, but I think women ask for help more readily than men.
Yeah.
And female writers will come to me more often saying, I just wrote a novel, I need help. You're a novelist, you're teaching novel 1 at UCLA Extension. I'm here for help on trying to figure out how to write a novel. The other thing is to find the novels that you love the most, or the memoir that you love the most, or the poetry you love the most, and just start immersing yourself in that. And then just knowing that you don't know what you're doing, even if you know what you're doing, is really, yeah, right? I'm writing a novel, I don't know what I'm doing. That means I'm taking it to my readers, I'm taking a class, I'm talking to people that have written books like this or reading their books, so I know where I am.
Well, that's beautiful. So you're married.
Yes.
And, being a writer, it's an isolating thing. I mean, you have to be immersed. How do you balance that level of immersion in your writing? I mean, because you're prolific, with your husband and the dogs and your life.
The writing is the easy part because I'm extremely organized. I get up very early. I do my work. I do the work that pays the bills regularly. I do that first. Right? I'm reading my students' work, and then I will write every day. And I find I started up as a writer when my kids were very little. So I would get up and get my half an hour, 45 minutes in, and call it good, because then I had to get everybody up and get to work, right? So that's not my problem. The problem is I'm trying to work. I canoe and I paddle a dragon boat, and that's where my husband's getting really irritated with me. It's like, are you ever going to be home for dinner? I'm probably not until I can't paddle anymore. So I think there are, if you treat. One of my favorite novelists is John Irving. I did my first master's thesis on him, and he used to say, and I don't believe him, but he must be telling his truth. He would write 8 hours a day. If I wrote 8 hours a day, I'd be up. This would be the cleanest office. There would be no dust. I would have cleaned everything. I would have rearranged the furniture. because I can write a lot in short bursts.
Yes, me too.
And yeah, and get myself into the space to get creative and make every word count. I wrote a cozy mystery. I started in January. I finished in March, and it's 260 pages long, and I did it in short amount. You can organize creativity, if that is a
Yes.
contradiction in terms.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, how do people find you and your work?
I have a website. It's my full novel writing name, Jessica Barksdale Inclan, INCLAN.com. I had a website back, I got it in 2001, and also you can find me at UCLA Extension. If you're interested in a class, I teach novel 1 through 4. And if you feel like getting a fully online MFA at Southern New Hampshire University, I'm also in their little cast of characters in terms of faculty.
That's awesome. Well, okay, ladies, if you're interested in writing, I would really encourage you to look her up, see what she's doing, get some of her books, and get inspired. I ask the same last question of every guest. The show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on this planet?
I've thought about this a lot, and I believe seriously, if we could eradicate sexism from every family in every part of this planet, where every child was raised in a home where all sexes, whatever gender or sex, everyone in the small little place that children were raised, we would have a different we would have very few isms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women would know that they could be awakened to anything from infancy by the way their mother and or father were treated in the home.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how to achieve that. But I feel like that's the place where if we could start as parents trying to make our relationships equal and balanced and whole and true for both of the people in the home, that the children would see that and pop right out, awakened and ready to go.
Right. And feeling safe and protected and seen.
Right.
Couldn't agree with you more. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you, Cynthia.
You're just so
Sorry.
It's okay.
Cynthia is a new name that I just invented.
A new synonym for something I'll be doing.
Thank you.
Okay, well, ladies, I want to say this to you. I say it in a different form every week. Your creative genius is unique. There's nobody like you. So whether it comes out as writing or painting or singing or dancing or teaching or cooking or whatever it is, now is the time to dive into it, open to the infinite possibilities of your life and bring it to the planet. That fully expressed woman is a game changer on this planet because we get to show everyone what it looks like to be a loving, nurturing, powerful, dynamic, feminine expression. So take that with you. Know that I love you. I can't wait to see you again and have a great day.